Time to check out my second pick for my Best in Horror countdown, looking at the best of the best in spooky movies released between October 1st, 2023 and September 30th, 2024. Holidays are always ripe fodder for horror. Most of the time, these wholesome moments are perfect to be warped and twisted into something absolutely gruesome. Take today's picks, for example, which wraps some of the most important holiday traditions around a decayed and dank thumb. It's time on the countdown for number 30, Thanksgiving. It was released on November 17th, 2023, and is streaming on Netflix from TriStar Pictures and Sony Pictures Releasing. Thanksgiving is directed by Eli Roth and written by Jeff Rendell and Eli Roth. 1 year after a Black Friday sale went very, very wrong, resulting in quite a few lives lost, a group of kids are tormented by a masked killer dressed like the founder of the town of Plymouth, Massachusetts, a pilgrim named John Carver. But as the bodies pile up, the killer just might be closer to the group than they believe. That's the bare-bones premise of Thanksgiving, a film teased to us in the middle section of Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez's Grindhouse double feature released 16 years ago. Whether filmmaker Eli Roth had difficulty convincing producers to back the full-length feature based on the mock trailer, or he just ran out of ideas and figured he might as well go back and elaborate on it is debatable. But none of that matters, as Thanksgiving proves to be a wonderful no-frills homage to old-school slashers. It's no frills, there's absolutely no politics or some kind of deep message the film is trying to convey. It's just a straight-up slasher story with a lot of deviously funny and gratuitously gory kills. And I'm pretty okay with that. Yes, Thanksgiving is basically Scream set during the holidays, with a masked killer communicating with a bunch of kids via their cell phones while offing them one at a time because of some kind of past sin remotely tied to them all. You could give John Carver a survival knife, a robe, and a Scream mask, and this would pretty much be Ghostface running around and doing all of that carving. But Roth knows this, and while these elements are familiar, he manages to pepper in some nice homages to some more obscure slashers of the past, like Happy Birthday to Me, as the killer gathers the survivors and those he has killed around a dinner table for the climax, and another holiday horror, My Bloody Valentine, as our final girl Jessica, played quite well by Nell Verlaque, is being pursued by two men wanting to be her boyfriend, and either could just possibly be the killer. Pair that with basically a giallo format, which proved to be the format of so many 80s slasher films, and this one is derivative as all get out. Honestly though, I didn't mind it that Thanksgiving felt familiar. Roth takes advantage of many Thanksgiving Day traditions, using all kinds of cooking utensils as murder weapons, and staging the elaborate kills with Turkey Day themes. While I believe Krampus handled the themes of materialism during the holidays a lot better, the opening sequence where the Black Friday sale erupts in an all-out riot is pretty fun. It sets the stage for everything to unfold later with the killings capably, even though the opening sequence is by far the weakest part of the film. I much prefer the over-the-top carnage that Roth delivers later in the film during the Thanksgiving parade than the clunky and somewhat overly complicated way Roth had to leap through so many narrative hurdles and hoops to make the entire cast show up at the Black Friday event at the same time. The low-scoped opener just doesn't give off the intensity I feel Roth wanted, and therefore makes the rest of the film an uphill battle in terms of being the inciting moment of what steers the rest of the film. Luckily, Roth recovers from the tepid opening, keeping the mystery of who the killer is under wraps for most of the film and giving us plenty of fun kills to endure until that revelation arrives. Setting up these scenes of carnage and highlighting the gore of them all is definitely where Roth's heart lies. Each kill is unique and well-paced, specifically one scene in the middle of the movie where one victim awakens while she's being prepared to be cooked like a turkey and tries to escape from the killer's lair. There's a lot of good cat and mouse going on in this scene. The iconic trampoline scene from the original trailer is another highlight, and while it doesn't play out as deviously as the trailer does, it gives you something pretty gory, and while it's different, maybe we'll get to see that scene in the sequel. While some of the scenes are quickly cut through, most are quite gruesome, offering up lots of blood and guts for the gorehounds in the crowd. And while it has become a Scream cliche for me to guess who the killer is in the opening moments, Roth manages to throw in quite a few red herrings, which kept me guessing. Is it the old boyfriend with the pretty hair who ghosted Jessica after last year's massacre? How about the bland new boyfriend? Or the owner of the retail store where the massacre occurred? Or maybe it's the biggest name star of the cast, Patrick Dempsey. Or how about the new weird deputy who no one likes, has a shady past, and stares at the camera a bit too long like Roy did in Friday the 13th Part 5, A New Beginning? Halfway through and I had some solid guesses, but I like it that more than one of these characters could have been the killer, while some others might be killers in future installments. What I'm saying is that Roth has set up a story and a cast of characters who all have dark motives and could be the killer, which means he's done his job at setting up a very strong mystery. I feel these cartoon masks that seem to be popping up in recent modern slashers, like the baby mask in Happy Death Day and the Guy Smiley mask in Totally Killer, really aren't scary at all. The blank stare of John Carver's mask worked for me, though. It has shades of Michael Myers' emotionless shape mask and exudes just enough creep factor as the killer stands and stares at its intended victims. Again, Roth borrows from Scream as the mask is worn by everyone in the crowd, making for some clever sleight of hand later on where there's too many people around to know who or where the killer is. But don't expect the slasher genre to be reimagined or expectations to be not so ironically flipped as a result of Thanksgiving. Roth is just telling a standard slasher, and I had a great time with it because it left the bells and whistles out. It's just gore and violence and a couple of shocks, a masked killer and victims and a final girl, and a cliched villain speech at the end explaining complex motivations for the rampage. Much is left unanswered, as Roth seemed to know he would be doing a sequel, which has already been confirmed, by the way. Roth is a horror fan true and true. Sometimes this has been a benefit to his films, other times it's been a curse. With Thanksgiving, it really seems like Roth was giving it his all, honoring the slashers of old without shitting on them as the Scream franchise sometimes has been known to do. For that, I'm definitely giving Thanksgiving a strong recommendation to slasher fans, especially the old school ones. Now that Thanksgiving has been good and ruined, how about some horror just in time for Christmas? Jen Wexler's The Sacrifice Game missed the countdown just by a skosh, but at least I can give it some props here. The Sacrifice Game was released on December 8th, 2023, and is streaming on Shudder. It's directed by Jen Wexler and written by Sean Redlitz and Jen Wexler. It's 1971, and Samantha, played by Madison Baines, finds out she has to stay at her boarding school for the Christmas break instead of going home. But it's okay. The class outcast, Clara, played by Georgia Akin, and their young teacher, Rose, played by Chloe Levine, are there to help her celebrate the holiday anyway. Meanwhile, a cult leader, led by the maniacal Jude, played by Mina Massoud, have been murdering seemingly random people every night leading up to Christmas Eve. When the cult shows up on the doorway of the boarding school, they force their way in and sit themselves down for a dinner with Samantha, Clara, and Rose. But what secrets does the boarding school have lurking in its basement, and what does it have to do with the cult's rampage? Jen Wexler delivered the fun and frantic The Ranger a few years back and returns with another thrill-a-minute roller coaster of a horror yarn set on Christmas. While the Christmassy aspects don't really take center stage of the story, it does provide a nice way to get our protagonists alone, and that's all the impetus needed for some merry mayhem. Wexler keeps the story popping by jumping back and forth between teenage angst at the school to the cult's various attacks. And once the cult shows up, things continue to get nice and dire as these guys mean business and play for keeps, as evidenced by some pretty significant deaths along the way. Much of what makes this film work is the cast. On the side of the angels, sort of, are Madison Baines, Samantha, and Georgia Akins, Clara, who have good chemistry together despite the fact that both are reluctant to form a bond. Their young age doesn't seem to be a factor in delivering the drama needed for their pivotal roles in this story. And while I love Chloe Levine as an actress, especially in the tragically underseen The Transfiguration and the previously mentioned The Ranger, I feel she might have been miscast as the young teacher. Sure, she might have been the right age for the role, but Levine has a youthfulness that makes her feel right at home with the two very much younger girls she's supposed to be watching. Levine just didn't fit in as the oldest of this group of protagonists for me. In the opposite corner are the cult members. I really like the messed up dynamic of the group, as every one of them seems to be in love with Olivia Scott Welch's Maisie, and for good reason. She is quite the temptress, despite her young age. Laurent Petrie's Doug has the right kind of smarm and reminds me a bit of a young Ed Norton here, and while Mena Massoud's Jude is center stage most of the time and does deliver a diabolically bent performance, his gleeful "I'm so bad and I love it" attitude wears a bit thin. Seeing these despicable people take on the seemingly innocent girls of the school is a dire dynamic indeed. There are twists and turns galore in the sacrifice game, and there may be a tiny lull in the middle as the final plot point is driven all the way home a little too much, but for the most part, all of these turns work. I'll leave it at that, as I feel the surprises are what make this movie work so well. While the subversion of expectations has become absolutely expected these days in horror, Wexler is able to make it all make sense and, most importantly, entertaining. Add in a wonderful 70s flair, as well as some great 70s music, and you've got a solid holiday horror film that's definitely worth a watch. Once again and always, feel free to agree, disagree, or how about you play along at home and give me your own picks for your favorite horror movies. It's October, so let's talk horror. Come back tomorrow for the next level in the Best in Horror Countdown. Be sure to hit all of those pertinent bells and whistles down below, and you'll never miss a post. Happy Halloween, folks. You're doomed to live the life you're meant to be, stuck inside your reality. You're